I didn't cry when he said he was leaving because something in me had already been grieving for years. The kitchen light above the sink buzzed the way it always did when it got too warm. That little nervous hum that made the whole room feel unsettled, like it knew something I didn't. I stood there with my hand wrapped around a mug I hadn't even filled yet, staring at the back of my husband's neck as he leaned against the counter, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes fixed on some invisible spot on the tile. There was a smell of dish soap and old coffee in the air. The dishwasher was open, half unloaded, and a single plate sat on the counter like we'd forgotten how to finish things. "Karen," he said, and my name sounded foreign in his mouth. Like he'd rehearsed it. Like he'd practiced saying it without warmth. I waited for the rest. That's what you do when you've spent years with a man who makes you wait for his mood, wait for his attention, wait for an apology that never comes. He exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled, the way he used to when he was about to give a client bad news. He didn't look at me. "I'm done," he said. "I can't do this anymore." There are sentences that land softly like a leaf. And then there are sentences that hit like a dropped glass, sharp, sudden, and impossible to put back together. I didn't ask what he meant. Not right away. Because some part of me had been living with the echo of those words for a long time. In the empty chair across from me at dinner. In the quiet drive home when the radio stayed off. In the way he'd stopped saying goodnight and started saying I'm going to bed. I set the mug down carefully, like I was afraid my hands might shake and prove something I didn't want to admit. "Done," I finally whispered. "As in, what?" He swallowed, and for a second, just a second, I saw a flicker of something like guilt. Or maybe it was impatience. Those two emotions can look the same on someone who's tired of pretending. "As in us," he said. "This marriage. I feel trapped. I feel like I'm living someone else's life. Someone else's life." I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Because if anyone had been living someone else's life, it had been me. A wife-shaped silhouette moving through rooms, keeping things clean, keeping things quiet, keeping the peace. I looked past him, out the window over the sink. The yard was dark, the porch light making the grass look pale and tired. Our neighborhood was silent in that late-night way, where even the air feels like it's holding its breath. "Is there someone else?" I asked, and my voice surprised me, steady, almost polite. That's what shocked me most. The calm. The way my body didn't go into a scene. No yelling, no throwing, no dramatic collapse. Just a question, plain as a folded towel. He didn't answer right away. And that silence was the first confession. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of his wedding ring like it was suddenly too tight. "It doesn't matter," he said finally. "This isn't working. I don't want to keep pretending." Pretending. I took a slow breath and tasted the bitterness of a day-old argument that never got resolved. I felt something settle deep in my chest, something heavy and cold, like a stone placed carefully in the center of me. He pushed off the counter and walked past me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. The same one I'd bought him for Christmas 2 years ago. The bottle I'd watched collect dust on his dresser because he'd stopped caring about that stuff. Now it clung to him like a new habit. "I'm going to sleep in the guest room," he said, like this was a practical arrangement. Like we were discussing furniture. I stood there, still, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. And when the guest room door clicked shut, I felt the quiet around me expand like it had been waiting to swallow everything whole. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my hands folded in front of me and stared at a single crumb on the placemat. I thought about the word done and how it sounded like an ending, clean and final. But my life had taught me that endings are rarely clean. They leak. They bleed into the next day. And somewhere inside that silence, a small, stubborn part of me whispered something I didn't know I still had. Not like this. Not without the truth. Before all of that, before the confession, before the guest room door, before the cold stone settled in my chest, my life looked normal from the outside. Ordinary. The kind of ordinary people mistake for happiness. We lived in a modest 2-story house in a neighborhood where the lawns were trimmed and the mailboxes matched. The kind of street where people waved but didn't really know each other, where you could go years without anyone noticing your sadness as long as you put your trash bins out on time. My husband, Mark, worked as a project manager for a construction firm. He was good at it, organized, respected, steady. People called him reliable. They said things like, "You're lucky. He's a good man." And I used to nod and smile, because that's what wives do when the truth feels too complicated for small talk. I worked part-time at a medical billing office. Nothing glamorous, but it kept my mind busy and gave me a little money of my own. Our daughter, Ellie, was 16, bright-eyed, sharp-tongued in that teenage way that can cut you and still make you proud. We had routines. Sunday, grocery trips. Wednesday, laundry. Friday nights were supposed to be family nights, but somewhere along the years, that turned into Mark catching up on emails while Ellie stayed in her room and I watched a show with the volume low. If you'd asked me when it started, the distance, the emotional neglect, I couldn't have given you one clear date. It wasn't a cliff we fell off. It was a slow drift, like a boat untied from the dock. Mark stopped asking about my day. He stopped noticing when I changed my hair. He stopped reaching for my hand in public. The affection didn't end with a fight. It ended with a shrug. I tried, at first. I cooked his favorite meals, chicken piccata, beef stew in winter, the lemon cake his mother used to make. I set the table like it mattered. I bought new sheets, lit candles, suggested weekend trips. He'd respond with half smiles and maybe later. Later became a place we never arrived. There were nights I'd hear him laughing on the phone in the driveway, laughing the way he used to laugh with me. When I'd step outside, he'd cover the phone and say, "Just work stuff," then move a little farther away like my presence was inconvenient. Sometimes he'd come home late, not drunk, not messy, just late. And when I'd ask, he'd say, "Meetings ran over. You know how it is." I wanted to believe him, because believing him was easier than staring at the alternative. And I was tired. Tired in the bones. Tired of being the only one who cared enough to hold the marriage together. Ellie noticed, of course. Kids always do. One night, as I folded towels on the couch, she paused in the hallway and said, "Mom, do you and Dad even like each other?" It wasn't said with cruelty. It was said with that blunt honesty teenagers have, like they can't understand why adults insist on living inside things that hurt. I forced a smile and told her, "We're just going through a rough patch." But the truth was, we weren't going through anything. We were standing still, stuck in a quiet kind of loneliness that had become familiar. Then, about 2 months before that night in the kitchen, the first real clue arrived. It came dressed as something harmless. Mark started caring again. Not about me. Not about us. About himself. He bought new shirts. Not fancy, just nicer than his usual work polos. He started trimming his beard differently, clean lines, like he'd watched a tutorial. He began going to the gym after work, coming home with damp hair and that clean, soap and sweat smell. At first, I felt hopeful. Foolishly hopeful. Maybe he was trying. Maybe he'd finally looked in the mirror and remembered he had a family. But hope is fragile when it isn't fed. One evening, I found a receipt in his pocket while doing laundry, an expensive restaurant we'd never been to. 2 entrees, 2 drinks, dessert. A date night kind of total. When I asked him about it, he didn't even blink. "Work client," he said. "Had to entertain. You know how it is." And he kissed my forehead, quick, dismissive, and walked away. That kiss felt like a stamp on a lie. I started noticing more. His phone turned face down on every surface. The way he'd step outside to answer calls. The way he'd smile at texts and then erase the smile when I entered the room. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself marriages go through phases. But deep down, I felt it, the shift in the air, the hidden current under our daily life. And when he finally said, "I'm done," it didn't feel like a surprise. It felt like the moment the floor finally gave way after months of creaking. The morning after Mark said he was done, I woke up before my alarm, eyes open, heart oddly quiet, like it had already accepted something my mind was still trying to name. The house was still dark. I could hear the refrigerator hum, the faint ticking of the hallway clock, and, somewhere far off, a dog barking once and then stopping. Everything sounded sharper when you weren't sleeping beside someone anymore. I walked past the guest room door and paused. I didn't knock. I didn't need to. The space between us had become its own locked room. In the kitchen, I started the coffee machine out of habit. The smell filled the air, warm, familiar, almost comforting, and for a moment, I hated it for pretending this was a normal morning. Ellie came downstairs rubbing her eyes, her hair pulled into a messy knot. "Where's Dad?" she asked, already glancing toward the hallway. I swallowed. He slept in the guest room. She stared at me for a beat too long. Teenagers are experts at reading the temperature of a room. "Did you fight?" she asked. "No," I said, and my voice caught slightly on the truth. "We talked." She poured cereal into a bowl and sat at the table, chewing slowly like she was processing something bigger than breakfast. "Is he leaving?" she asked, softer now. I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect her from the weight of adult decisions. But I'd learned that lies don't protect. Lies just delay the pain until it hits harder. "I don't know yet," I said. "But things aren't okay." Ellie's spoon paused midair. "Is it because of someone else?" The way she said it, so direct, made my stomach turn. "What makes you ask that?" I said carefully. She shrugged, but her eyes didn't. "He's been weird. He smells different. And he's always texting. And when I walked into the garage last week, he slammed his phone in his pocket like I caught him doing something wrong." My daughter had been watching, quietly, collecting moments like evidence. I reached across the table and touched her hand. "I'm going to figure things out," I said. "Okay." She nodded, but her mouth tightened. "Please do," she whispered, like she was tired of living in the fog. That day, I went to work and moved through my hours like a person underwater, smiling when I had to, answering emails, listening to coworkers complain about small things that suddenly felt like luxuries. At lunch, I sat in my car and stared at my phone, fighting the urge to call Mark. To demand answers. To force a conversation he'd already decided was finished. But something held me back. Not fear. Not weakness. A kind of clarity. Because if he wanted out, fine. But I wasn't going to be dismissed like a used napkin after years of cleaning up his messes, emotional and otherwise, without knowing what I was really dealing with. That night, Mark came home late again. He didn't announce himself. He just stepped in quietly, like he hoped the house would be asleep and he could slip into the guest room unnoticed. But I was in the living room, sitting upright on the couch with the lamp on. The light made my shadow stretch across the carpet like it belonged to someone else. He paused when he saw me. "Ellie's asleep," I said before he could ask. He nodded. He looked tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from hard work. The kind that comes from living two lives. "We need to talk," I said. His shoulders rose and fell. "Karen." I already said what I needed to say. "No," I replied, steady. "You said you're done." "You didn't say why." "Not really." He rubbed his face, dragging his palm down his cheek. "Because it's not working. Because we're not happy." "Who's we?" I asked, and my voice sharpened just enough to cut through his practice lines. "Because I've been unhappy for a long time too, Mark." But I stayed. I tried. "So if you're walking away now, tell me what changed." His eyes flicked away. That tiny movement, barely noticeable, was louder than any confession. I stood up slowly. "There's someone else," I said. He didn't deny it. Not immediately. He pressed his lips together like he was holding back annoyance at being forced to say it out loud. "It's complicated," he finally muttered. That phrase. That cowardly little phrase people use when they don't want to admit they made a choice. "It's not complicated," I said. "It's betrayal. It's lying. It's bringing your secret into this house while our daughter sleeps upstairs." He flinched at the mention of Ellie, and for a second, I saw the man I married, the one who used to be gentle, who used to care about how his choices affected people. But then his face hardened again. "I didn't plan for this," he said. I let out a short laugh, dry and bitter. No one ever plans for it. They just keep making the same decision until it becomes normal. He stared at me, jaw tight. "I'm not doing this with you tonight," he said, and he started to move past me. I stepped into his path. "Who is she?" I asked. His eyes flashed. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Because if you're going to rip our lives apart, I deserve to know whose hands are on the threads." He hesitated. I watched his throat bob as he swallowed. Then he said it, like it was nothing. "Her name is Tessa." The name struck me like cold water. Tessa. Not a stranger's name. Not some faceless mystery. A name I'd heard before. A name that belonged to someone who had been in our life, on the edges, in the background, like furniture you don't notice until it's gone. Tessa from your office? I asked, and my voice came out smaller than I wanted. Mark looked down. That was all the confirmation I needed. Tessa. The new admin who'd joined last year. The one Mark had mentioned casually at dinner, saying things like, she's organized, and she's funny, and she reminds me of you when you were younger. I remembered laughing at that, half flattered, half uncomfortable, because why was he comparing me to another woman? Now I knew. Is this why you started going to the gym? I asked. The shirts? The restaurant receipt? He exhaled, and it sounded like relief, like he was tired of hiding and was grateful I'd put the puzzle together for him. I didn't want to hurt you, he said, as if that sentence could make anything gentler. I felt my hands shake now, just slightly, so I clasped them together. How long? I asked. Mark stared at the floor. A few months. A few months. In marriage, a few months can hold 1,000 small lies. Have you been bringing her here? I asked, and my voice went icy. His eyes snapped up. No. I studied him. The speed of the answer. The way it came too fast. Don't lie to me, I said. He didn't respond. He just looked away again. And in that moment, I realized something that made my stomach twist. I didn't actually know where the truth ended with him anymore. That night, after he went into the guest room, I walked through the house and checked the locks out of habit. I paused by Ellie's door and listened to her soft breathing. I felt a sudden wave of tenderness and anger, tenderness for her innocence, anger that her father had risked shattering it. Then I went into my bedroom alone and sat on the edge of the bed. The sheets were cold on Mark's side. And that's when I made a decision, not out of revenge, but out of survival. If Mark could live in secrets, then I could learn them. Because I wasn't going to be the last one to know what was happening in my own marriage. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 16 years of being his wife. I followed him. I told myself I was just going to watch him leave. That was the lie I used to get out of the driveway that morning. The sky was pale and overcast, the kind of gray that makes everything feel unfinished. Mark backed out like he always did, careful, methodical, unaware that for the first time in our marriage, I was sitting 2 houses down in my car, hands clenched around the steering wheel, watching his taillights disappear toward the main road. I waited a full minute before pulling out. Not because I needed to, but because part of me was still arguing with myself. This isn't who you are, Karen. You're not the kind of woman who follows her husband. But then another voice, quieter, steadier, answered back. You're the kind of woman who deserves the truth. I kept a safe distance, 2 or 3 cars back, my heart thudding in a way that felt almost calm. There was no adrenaline rush. No wild panic. Just focus. Mark didn't go to work. I knew the route by heart, every light, every turn, and when he passed the exit he always took, something inside me tightened. He drove across town instead, into an area of newer apartment buildings and coffee shops with chalkboard signs and string lights that tried too hard to feel cozy. He pulled into the parking lot of a cafe I'd never been to. I parked across the street, my hands trembling now, just a little. I told myself I'd leave if he went inside alone. I told myself I wouldn't go any further. But then I saw her. She stepped out of a silver sedan and smoothed her hair back behind her ears. She was younger than me. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. Polished in that effortless way people are when they don't yet carry the weight of a long marriage. Tessa. I recognized her from the office holiday party last year. She'd worn a green dress and laughed too loudly at Mark's jokes. I remembered standing beside him that night, my hand on his arm, feeling like an accessory to my own husband. Now she walked toward him with a smile that didn't belong to me. They hugged. Not a quick, polite hug. A familiar one. I watched from behind my windshield as her hand lingered on his shoulder, as he leaned down slightly to say something that made her laugh. I couldn't hear the sound, but I knew that laugh. I'd heard it before, through the phone, through the walls of our house, disguised as work stuff. They went inside together. I sat there longer than I should have, staring at the cafe door like it might open and close on a different reality if I waited long enough. Eventually, I got out of the car. The bell above the door chimed when I walked in. The smell of espresso and warm pastries hit me, rich and overwhelming. I scanned the room and found them immediately, tucked into a corner table like they belonged there. Mark's back was to me. Tessa was facing the room. Her eyes flicked up and locked onto mine. The recognition was instant. Her smile froze, then slowly collapsed into something tight and uncomfortable. Mark noticed the shift and turned around. The color drained from his face. "Karen," he said, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. Every head in the cafe turned toward us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just walked over and stood there, the space between us buzzing with something sharp and electric. "So this is what work looks like now," I said calmly. Mark opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "This isn't." "Don't," I interrupted. "Please don't insult me on top of everything else." Tessa stood too, clutching her purse like a shield. I didn't know you were coming," she said, and I almost laughed at the absurdity of that sentence. "I wasn't invited," I replied. "That's the point." There was a long, terrible silence. I looked at Mark. Really looked at him. The man I'd built a life with. The man who'd watched our daughter take her first steps. The man who now couldn't meet my eyes. "You told me you were done," I said quietly. "But you didn't tell me you were already replaced." His face twisted. "Karen, please. Let's not do this here." "Why?" I asked. "Because it's uncomfortable? Because people might see you." I gestured around us. "This is where you chose to be. With her." The word hung in the air. Her. Tessa shifted her weight, eyes darting between us. "Mark said you two were separated," she said softly. I turned to her then. "Is that what he told you?" She nodded, hesitant. "He said things were basically over." I looked back at Mark. "Is that what you told her?" He didn't answer. And in that moment, something inside me snapped cleanly in two. Not with rage. With clarity. "Good luck," I said to Tessa, my voice steady. "If he can lie this easily while still sleeping under the same roof as his wife and child, he'll lie to you too." Her face flushed, and she looked at Mark like she was seeing him for the first time. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked out. The bell chimed again, cheerful and cruel. Back in my car, my hands shook so badly I had to sit there with my eyes closed, breathing through it. The shock came in waves, hot, then cold, like my body didn't know which direction to lean into. But beneath it all, there was something else. Relief. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid or needy or too much. I was right. When I got home, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but also clearer. Like the fog had lifted just enough for me to see the road ahead. That evening, Mark came home early. Too early. He stood in the doorway like a stranger, his briefcase still in his hand. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded. "We already did." He set the briefcase down slowly. "I didn't want you to find out like that." "And yet," I said, "you did nothing to stop it." He ran a hand through his hair. "Tessa didn't know. I told her we were separating." "So you lied to both of us," I replied. He winced. "I was trying to figure things out." I crossed my arms. "While dragging two women and a teenage girl through your confusion." He looked up sharply. "Ellie doesn't know." "She knows more than you think," I said. "Kids always do." We stood there facing each other, years of shared history pressing in on us. "I want a divorce," he said finally. The words landed differently now. Not like a threat. Not like a shock. Like confirmation. "Okay," I said. That single word seemed to catch him off guard. "Okay," he repeated. "Yes," I said. "But we're doing this honestly. No more secrets. No more half-truths." His shoulders sagged, like he'd expected a fight and didn't know what to do without one. "I'll talk to Ellie," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "We'll talk to her. Together. You owe her that much." He nodded. That night, after Ellie went to bed, I sat alone in the living room and stared at the family photos on the wall. Birthday cakes. Beach trips. School plays. None of them were lies. But they weren't enough to save us. Still, as painful as it was, I felt something settle into place. I had chosen truth over comfort. And that choice would change everything. The hardest conversation wasn't the one in the cafe. It wasn't even the one where Mark finally said the word divorce out loud. It was the moment we sat across from our daughter at the dining table, the same table where she'd done homework and blown out birthday candles, and asked her to listen. Ellie knew before we said anything. She studied our faces with a seriousness that didn't belong on someone so young. Her fingers toyed with the sleeve of her hoodie, twisting the fabric like she was bracing herself. "Just say it," she murmured. "I already feel it." Mark cleared his throat. "Your mom and we're going to separate." The word hung there, fragile. Ellie didn't cry right away. She nodded once, slow and deliberate. "Because of her?" she asked, looking straight at her father. Mark flinched. "Ellie, because of the woman you text all the time," she continued, her voice steady but sharp around the edges. "The one you laugh with in the garage." Silence wrapped around us like a heavy blanket. I watched my husband realize, in real time, that he had never been as discreet as he thought. That his daughter had been watching him the same way I had, quietly, carefully, with a growing ache she didn't know how to name. "I messed up," he said finally. "And I'm sorry." Ellie let out a humorless laugh. "That's it? You messed up?" Her eyes shone now, but she blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. "Mom didn't mess up. She stayed. She always stays." Something cracked in my chest. Mark reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. "I don't hate you," she said. "But I don't trust you right now." Those words landed harder than any accusation. Trust. Once broken, it doesn't shatter loudly. It erodes. Quietly. Permanently. After that night, things moved quickly and painfully slow all at once. Mark moved out within 2 weeks. He took clothes, toiletries, his laptop. He left behind books he never read and furniture he never noticed. The house seemed to exhale after he was gone, like it had been holding tension in its walls. Ellie withdrew into herself at first. She spent more time in her room, headphones on, door closed. When she did talk, it was clipped, careful. I gave her space, but I stayed present. I knocked before entering her room. I asked simple questions. I made her favorite meals and didn't comment when she barely touched them. One night, I found her sitting on the back steps, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the dark yard. "I don't want to end up like you," she said suddenly. The word stung, but I understood what she meant. "You mean married to someone who stopped seeing you," I said. She nodded. I sat beside her. "Then don't ignore the quiet parts," I said gently. "The moments where you feel small. Love isn't loud all the time, but it should never make you invisible." She leaned her head against my shoulder, just slightly. "You're strong," she whispered. I smiled sadly. I didn't feel strong for a long time. The legal part of the divorce was mercifully straightforward. Mark didn't fight me. He didn't argue about the house or finances. I think guilt made him agreeable. Or maybe relief. But what surprised me was how quickly his new life became visible. He and Tessa didn't last. I heard it through mutual acquaintances first, careful whispers at the grocery store, sympathetic looks from people who suddenly knew more about my life than I wanted them to. "She left him," someone told me gently. Turns out he wasn't as separated as she thought. I didn't feel satisfaction when I heard that. I felt distance. Because by then, my focus had shifted. I started reclaiming things I'd set aside over the years. I painted the spare room. I signed up for a weekend writing workshop, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. I rearranged the furniture, not because it needed it, but because I did. There was power in small choices. Mark tried to come back once. Not physically, emotionally. He showed up at the house one afternoon when Ellie was at school, standing on the porch like he used to, hands in his pockets. "I made a mistake," he said. I looked at him and felt something like fondness, but no longing. "I know," I replied, "but mistakes still have consequences." He nodded, eyes heavy. "I miss us. I miss who I thought we were," I said honestly. "But I don't miss being alone in a marriage." He didn't argue. I think he knew there was nothing left to negotiate. As months passed, people stopped asking how I was holding up. They started noticing that I laughed more easily, that my shoulders didn't hunch the way they used to, that I spoke with certainty. I wasn't healed, but I was healing. One evening, as Ellie and I ate dinner together, just the two of us, she looked up and smiled. "You seem lighter," she said. I nodded. "I am." That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone on the couch and thought about the woman I'd been at the start of this story, the one gripping a mug in the kitchen, listening to a man say he was done. I realized something important. He hadn't ended me. He had freed me from a version of life that required my silence. And in that quiet living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life rebuilt, I felt gratitude, not for the betrayal, but for the truth it forced into the light. There's a strange loneliness that comes after the chaos ends. Not the sharp, panicked kind that keeps you awake at night, but the quiet kind that settles in once the house stops holding its breath. Once the arguments are over. Once the explanations have been given. Once everyone else assumes you're fine now. That was the season I entered after Mark left for good. The paperwork was signed. The routines were adjusted. Ellie and I found our new rhythm, one built on honesty, even when it was uncomfortable. On evenings where we sat together on the couch, not saying much, but no longer pretending. And yet, in the stillness, memories had a way of showing up uninvited. Sometimes it was small things. A shirt of Mark's I hadn't noticed before, still hanging in the back of the closet. A coffee mug he always used, tucked behind the others. The sound of a car door closing outside that made my heart jump before my mind could catch up. Grief doesn't always look like crying. Sometimes it looks like muscle memory. One afternoon, months after the divorce, I found myself standing in the grocery store aisle staring at his favorite cereal. I reached for it automatically, then stopped. I laughed softly at myself and put it back. That small moment felt like a victory. Ellie adjusted in her own way. She didn't talk much about her father, but when she did, it was honest. "He texts me," she said one night. "Sometimes." I kept my voice neutral. "How does that make you feel?" She shrugged, confused. "He acts like everything's normal." I nodded. "You don't have to rush forgiveness," I told her. "Or closure. You're allowed to take your time." She studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You're different now." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Braver," she said simply. I carried that word with me for days. Brave. I hadn't felt brave when I followed Mark that morning. I'd felt scared. Desperate. Tired of doubting my own instincts. But maybe bravery isn't the absence of fear. Maybe it's the decision to stop ignoring it. A few weeks later, I ran into Tessa. It happened at the pharmacy of all places. I was standing in line when I sensed someone beside me stiffen. I turned, and there she was. She looked thinner, less polished. Her hair pulled back without care. She glanced at me, eyes widening with recognition, then looked down at the floor. I could have ignored her. That would have been easy. But something in me had softened. "I'm Karen," I said gently. She looked up, startled. "I know." There was an awkward pause. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "For my part in everything. I really didn't know." I studied her face and saw not a villain, but a woman who had trusted the wrong man. "I believe you," I said. "And I hope you learn to ask better questions next time." She nodded, eyes glossy. "I already have." We stood there for another moment, then went our separate ways. I didn't feel closure, but I felt peace. That same peace followed me into other parts of my life. At work, I started speaking up more, saying no when I needed to, taking credit when I deserved it. I stopped apologizing for existing. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from, people who welcomed me back without asking for explanations. One evening, over dinner with an old friend, she said, "You seem awake." I smiled. "I think I finally am." There were still hard days. Days when I wondered how I'd missed the signs sooner. Days when I replayed conversations, searching for the moment I could have changed everything. But then I'd remind myself, I didn't fail my marriage. My marriage failed to meet me halfway. And that distinction mattered. Mark and I eventually found a polite distance. We communicated about Ellie. We avoided old wounds. He respected my boundaries in a way he never had before. Once, during a school event, he leaned over and whispered, "You look happy." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, I am. And I meant it. Happiness, I learned, doesn't always come from getting what you wanted. Sometimes it comes from letting go of what was quietly breaking you. One night, as Ellie and I washed dishes together, music playing softly in the background, she bumped her shoulder into mine. "Mom," she said. "Yes. Thank you for choosing yourself." I turned and really looked at her, and felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I chose us," I corrected gently. Later, alone in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and thought about how this story began with a man saying he was done. He thought he was ending something. But what he really did was force the truth into the open. And once truth steps into the light, it doesn't just expose betrayal. It exposes strength. By the time a full year had passed, I stopped measuring my life by what I'd lost. That didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, on ordinary days, when I realized I hadn't thought about Mark in hours. Then days. Then weeks. Healing doesn't announce itself. It slips in when you're busy living. The house began to feel fully ours again. Ellie redecorated her room, choosing colors I never would have picked, and I let her. We made new traditions: Sunday morning pancakes with music playing too loud, late night movies with the lights off and our phones forgotten. One afternoon, I stood in the doorway watching her laugh at something on her screen, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been in a long time. That was when I knew we were going to be okay. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. I started dating eventually, not seriously, not with urgency. Just coffee. Conversations. Learning what it felt like to be seen without performing. The first man I went out with asked me what my favorite book was. Not what I did for work. Not whether I had kids. Not whether I was over my divorce. Just that. And when I answered, he listened. Really listened. That alone felt revolutionary. I didn't rush anything. I didn't attach my worth to someone else's interest. I went home after those dates and slept peacefully in my own bed, content with the fact that my life no longer depended on anyone else choosing me. That was new. Mark tried once more to test the waters, subtly this time. He texted late one night, "I still think about you." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, "I hope you're well. Please keep our communication about Ellie." He didn't reply. And for the first time, that silence didn't hurt. It confirmed something I already knew. I had moved on, not away from him, but toward myself. Ellie graduated high school that spring. As I sat in the bleachers watching her cross the stage, I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from pride. She was strong, clear-eyed, unafraid to call things by their names. After the ceremony, she hugged me tightly. "You showed me how to walk away from something that hurts," she whispered. I held her close. "I showed you how to walk toward something better." That night, after the house grew quiet, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The same kitchen. The same light above the sink, still buzzing slightly when it got too warm. But everything else was different. I thought back to that first night, the mug in my hands, the man's back turned to me, the word "done" echoing through the room. I realized something then that I wish every woman could know before heartbreak teaches it the hard way. Someone choosing to leave doesn't mean you weren't enough. Sometimes it means you were no longer willing to disappear to make them comfortable. I didn't catch him just in the act of betrayal. I caught myself in the act of waking up. And that changed the direction of my life. If you're listening to this and you're standing in a quiet kitchen right now, holding a mug that's gone cold, wondering whether the truth will hurt too much, let me ask you something. Would you rather live in a painful truth or a comfortable lie? Tell me in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, if it felt like a mirror you didn't know you needed, please consider subscribing. You're not alone here.